Okay, picture this. You've got a top surgeon, years of training, incredibly skilled, but during an operation, something simple goes wrong. Maybe a patient's heart just stops. And it takes someone senior to realize, wait, a colleague accidentally used a lethal dose of potassium. Something everyone knows is dangerous, it's in the textbooks, but somehow in the moment, it gets missed. We tend to think, expertise, experience, that's enough. But what if the sheer amount we know now, the complexity, just overwhelms our ability to apply it perfectly every time? This deep dive is all about a solution to that exact problem, and it's, well, surprisingly simple but really powerful.
Exactly. The book we're digging into today, Atul Gawande's The Checklist Manifesto, How to Get Things Right, tackles this head on. It really challenges how we think about achieving excellence when things get super complicated. So our mission here is to pull out the key ideas from Gawande's work and show you how something as basic as a checklist can actually prevent major failures, not just in medicine, but all over the place.
And Gawande is, well, he's perfectly placed for this, isn't he? He's a surgeon, but also writer for the New Yorker, so he's great at explaining things. He looks at why we fail, even with all this knowledge we have now. He talks about this shift, moving from failures of ignorance, like just not knowing stuff, to failures of ineptitude. That means failing to use the knowledge we actually do have correctly. We'll see examples from medicine, flying, building things, even finance. Yeah, it's really interesting how he starts sort of immediately questioning that idea of expertise being foolproof. What's one of the first really powerful examples he uses to, hammer home this problem of ineptitude
Right.
in medicine?
Oh, absolutely. He opens with some really unsettling stories from the OR, like the patient with a stab wound on Halloween. The team did everything by the book, checked him head to toe, monitored everything, got blood ready, standard stuff. But nobody asked what the weapon was. Turns out the other guy at the party was dressed as a soldier with a bayonet. Patient almost died, just because one basic question got missed. And this really highlights a distinction some philosophers made, Gorovitz and McIntyre. Failures come from ignorance, not knowing, or ineptitude, not applying what you know. Medicine used to battle ignorance mostly. Now ineptitude is the big fight.
It's pretty startling how common that ineptitude can be, even when people mean well. If the knowledge is there, what causes that breakdown? Is it just memory slipping, or is it something deeper about how we handle so many tasks, even for, like, the smartest people?
Often it's just the sheer volume, the number of steps. It's not always these huge dramatic mistakes like the potassium overdose you mentioned. Those happen. Think about the day-to-day stuff. There was an Israeli study found about 2 errors per patient per day in ICUs, and this is with highly skilled staff. Why? Because each patient needs something like 178 different actions every single day. Administering drugs, suctioning lungs, all of it, just managing that consistently is, well, it's incredibly tough. You see these complex cases like the patient Anthony DeFilippo Gawande writes about multiple complications infections. It shows how easy it is for crucial, basic steps to get missed, even by the pros.
And you might think, okay, that's a hospital problem. But Gawande shows this struggle with complexity. It's everywhere. Law, right. Missed deadlines, administrative errors, big malpractice issues, software design flaws, intelligence failures, how we respond to disasters. We know so much, but actually using it all consistently, that's the hard part. Okay, so if individual skill, even tons of experience, isn't always enough for this level of complexity, where do we look for answers? Where did Gawande find one of the sort of earliest, really solid solutions?
Well, he found it somewhere completely different. Aviation. And there's this really dramatic story from October 1935. The U.S. Army Air Corps was testing this new bomber, Boeing's Model 299. Way more advanced, they called it the Flying Fortress.
Yep.
But on a test flight, it takes off, climbs to about 300 feet, stalls and crashes, killed 2 people, including the pilot. The investigation, no mechanical failure, they called it pilot error. The plane was just too much airplane for one man to fly. The pilot, Major Ployer Hill, a top expert, chief of flight testing, he'd forgotten to release a new lock on the controls. A simple step, missed.
Right, so the answer wasn't just train pilots more. I mean, Major Hill was the expert. Instead, a group of pilots came up with something, well, almost ridiculously simple. They made a pilot's checklist. This wasn't just about that one plane, was it? It was this fundamental insight. Even experts get overwhelmed by complexity, and a simple tool like a checklist could make the unmanageable manageable, reliable even.
Exactly right. It was just an index card, basically. Simple, short checks for takeoff, flying, landing, taxiing. And with that checklist, pilots flew the Model 299, which became the famous B-17 bomber for 1.8 million miles without a single accident. That simple idea helped the B-17 become crucial in World War II. It was revolutionary, this idea of an external list to catch errors of memory, of attention. We even saw early versions in medicine, though they weren't called checklists then, like nurses in the 60s using vital sign charts, temp, pulse, blood pressure. That routine check proved vital. Later, they even added pain as the fifth vital sign, a kind of checklist thinking.
And this idea really took off in modern medicine with people like Dr. Peter Pronovost, right? He made that checklist for central line infections in ICUs at Johns Hopkins. Just basic steps everyone knew: wash hands, sterile gloves, drape the patient, but often got missed in the chaos. The results in Michigan were just staggering, weren't they? But I can imagine some people listening thinking, okay, great, but isn't that simplistic? Doesn't it sort of undermine the doctor's expertise? Like, you don't trust them. How did they get past that resistance? Because doctors did resist, right?
Oh, absolutely. That was the biggest hurdle. And yes, the results were phenomenal. At Hopkins, the line infection rate went from 11% down to 0. Saved millions, prevented deaths. Michigan saw similar huge drops when they adopted it statewide. But you're spot on about the resistance. Many doctors felt insulted or thought it was just, boring nursing stuff. Pronovost was smart about it, though. First, he didn't just force it on them. He asked hospitals to track their own infection rates first, let the data do the talking. Then he offered small incentives, like bonus payments, for participating. Made it feel collaborative, not like a top-down order. It changed the conversation from, you have to do this, to, hey, look at our numbers, let's work together on this.
It's really powerful seeing how this isn't just a medical issue. And what's amazing is how similar solutions pop up in totally different fields. Where else does Gawande look?
Yeah, exactly. Take construction. Think about building a skyscraper. It used to be one master builder, right? Now it's incredibly specialized teams, just like medicine. But their failure rate is astonishingly low, like 0.00002% a year. How? How? Well, an engineer named Joe Salvia explains they use two main kinds of checklists. One is the task checklist, that's like the detailed construction schedule, mapping out every single step. But just as critical is the communication checklist. They call it a submittal schedule. It basically forces experts from different trades, plumbing, electrical, structural, to actually talk to each other at specific crucial points. It makes sure all that specialized knowledge gets coordinated. Stops small, isolated bad judgments from becoming disasters. It's about integrating expertise.
Coordinating knowledge. That makes sense. And this idea even applies to something like disaster response, right? Gawande contrasts FEMA's response during Hurricane Katrina with Walmart's. FEMA seemed kind of stuck, centralized.
Yeah, FEMA struggled. Command and control. Officials sometimes dismissed reports from the ground. Supplies got held up because they weren't part of the official plan. Walmart, though, totally different approach. They empowered local managers. The CEO basically said, do the right thing. So managers started distributing water, food, setting up credit, even breaking into their own pharmacies to get medicine out, and they were praised for it. Senior management focused on setting goals and just keeping communication lines open. The big lesson from Katrina, Gawande argues, is that in really complex, unpredictable messes, telling everyone exactly what to do from the top just doesn't work. People on the ground need freedom to adapt, but, and this is key, they also need to coordinate, communicate. Use that freedom within a shared, disciplined framework.
You even see this idea in, well, unexpected places, like that famous story about Van Halen and the M&Ms. David Lee Roth demanding no brown M&Ms backstage. Sounds like total rock star diva behavior, right? But it was actually a brilliant checklist item.
It really was. If you found brown M&Ms, it was a red flag. It meant the promoter probably hadn't read the whole technical writer for their huge, complex stage setup. It was his quick check. Did they pay attention to the details? Did they read the part about stage weight limits, electrical needs, all the critical safety stuff? Turns out, rock stars can be pretty clever systems thinkers. It's a great example of a simple check for a complex process.
Who knew? And then there's the restaurant world. Chef Jody Adams at Rialto. She uses recipes. Those are task checklists, right?
Yeah.
For consistency. But she also has a daily powwow. That's her communication checklist.
Exactly. Before every service, the team gets together. They talk about issues, big party running late, someone called in sick, supplier didn't deliver something.
Yeah.
They figure out how to adapt together as a team. It shows that even when you need to improvise, that communication structure, that checklist approach to talking things through is vital.
Okay, so it's clear it's not just having a checklist, it's having a good one. Gawande talks to Daniel Borman, a guy from Boeing who designs flight checklists. He's learned a lot from studying crashes. What makes a checklist effective, according to Borman?
Right. Borman lays out some key principles. Good checklists need to be precise, efficient, practical, not just vague reminders. They shouldn't be too long. And they should focus on the killer items, the really dangerous steps that are easy to forget or skip. They need clear pause points, specific times you actually use the list, like before starting engines or before takeoff. He also talks about two types. DO confirm, where you do the tasks from memory, then use the list to double check, and redo, where you read the step, then do it, like following a recipe. That's for more complex sequences you don't do all the time. Brevity is key. Ideally, like 5 to 9 items for each pause point should only take maybe 60 to 90 seconds. And critically, you absolutely have to test them in the real world or in simulators, because the first draft is never perfect. It always needs refining.
So Gawande took these ideas and helped develop the WHO Safe Surgery Checklist, a global effort. It boiled down the most critical safety steps into, 19 items? With 3 main pauses, before anesthesia, before the first cut, and before the patient leaves the OR. And it wasn't just tasks, right? It included communication checks, like making sure the team introduces themselves, talks about potential risks for this specific patient.
That's right. And then they tested it properly in 8 hospitals around the world, rich countries, poor countries, different settings, UK, Canada, Tanzania, India, a real mix. And the results were just huge. Across the board, they saw a 36% drop in major complications and nearly 47% fewer deaths. You saw specific improvements like better antibiotic timing, making sure oxygen monitors were used correctly. But here's something really fascinating. Complications that you wouldn't think were directly related to the checklist items, like bleeding, also went down. What that suggests is that a huge part of the benefit wasn't just ticking boxes, it was improving teamwork, communication, that intangible stuff that actually saves lives. It showed the checklist helps build a safer system.
So if the evidence is that clear, that dramatic, why is there still so much resistance? You mentioned doctors feeling insulted, but it goes beyond that, right? And what does this mean for how we even think about heroism today?
Yeah, the resistance is deep-seated. It challenges professional identity, doctors feeling it's beneath them, nursing stuff. But it's not just medicine. Gawande talked to these really successful value investors, people like Monish Pabrai and Guy Spire. They use checklists explicitly to fight against what they call cocaine brain, getting overexcited in a rising market or fear mode when things are crashing. They found checklists help them make better, faster decisions, avoid dumb mistakes. Yet most people in finance still kind of scoff at the idea. There was even a study on venture capitalists. It found the ones who were methodical, like airline captains using checklists, got way better returns, like 80% median return, much better than the intuitive art critics, who got around 35%. But even knowing that, the systematic approach is still pretty rare. I think the resistance often boils down to this feeling that real expertise means you don't need aids like checklists, when actually, the more complex the field, the more you benefit from them.
Which brings us to maybe the most vivid story in the whole book, The Miracle on the Hudson. U.S. Airways Flight 1549, January 2009. Captain Sully Sullenberger lands the plane in the Hudson River after hitting beasts, losing both engines. Everyone survives. Amazing. Sully became this instant hero, but he kept saying, look, it was a crew effort. We followed procedures. It wasn't just him being a lone genius. That really challenges the typical hero story, doesn't it?
He's absolutely right to say that, and it's a perfect illustration of the book's point. Sully and his first officer, Jeffrey Skybles, they'd never even flown together before that day. But what did they do before they even started the engines? They followed discipline, they ran their checklists, they introduced themselves to the cabin crew, had a quick briefing about the flight, potential issues. That discipline turned them from 2 strangers into a team, systematically prepared. So when the birds hit, Skittles knew exactly what to do, trying engine restarts, getting ready for ditching while Sully flew the plane. They worked together within that practiced framework. And the very first item on many emergency checklists for losing an engine is simple. Fly the airplane. Maintain control. Focus on the absolute basics under extreme pressure. It's such a contrast to disasters like Tenerife in 1977, where a captain ignored his co-pilot's warnings, communication broke down, and over 500 people died. Aviation learned that professionalism isn't just skill and guts. It's also discipline, following procedures, working as a team. That's a 4th element.
That really does shift how we think about being professional, especially in complex fields. It pushes back against that idea of just total autonomy for the expert. It suggests that optimizing the individual parts, the individual experts, isn't enough. You have to optimize how they connect, how they work together. Like that analogy from Donald Berwick at IHI. You can have the best car parts in the world, but if they don't fit together, you don't have a good car. We need to think about the whole health system, not just the individual doctor.
Precisely. And Gawande himself had this personal moment, what he calls the save. He was doing this really risky tumor removal surgery, high chance of bleeding. He was confident, in his skills. But during the pre-op checklist, just going through the motions, he mentioned the bleeding risk. And a nurse, prompted by the checklist, actually called the blood bank. Turns out the blood wasn't ready. They got it ready fast. And sure enough, there was a massive hemorrhage during the surgery. Having that blood immediately available because of that one checklist item saved the patient's life. It wasn't just about catching an error. It created the space for the team to function well when things went sideways. It was that safety net.
So what we really explored today, looking through Gawande's work, is that when things get incredibly complex and so much of modern life is numb, the simple checklist isn't about making experts dumb. It's actually about making expertise better. It handles the basics, the routine, so our brains are free for the really hard stuff, the unexpected problems, the things that need human judgment and creativity.
Exactly. Think of it as a cognitive net. It's there to catch those unavoidable human slips. Memory fails, attention lapses, it frees up mental bandwidth, and it pushes us towards better discipline, better communication, better teamwork, ultimately just better, more reliable results. It lets experts focus on being truly expert by taking care of the things they really shouldn't have to constantly remember under pressure.
So maybe the thought to leave you with is this. What are the killer items in your own work, or even your daily life, the crucial steps that are easy to miss when things get busy or complicated? Could a simple checklist, thoughtfully designed, of course not just prevent mistakes, but actually help you perform better, focus on what truly matters? Maybe it's time to give it a try.